A 360 bar spin, looping out on the...
Coming up on Full Cycle, from every angle, the crazy kids at Crankworx are spectacular. We chat exclusively with Australia's Tour de France hopeful, Richie Porte.
The Tour's everything for me. You still pinch yourself when you're riding in the Tour.
And it's not just for the young'uns. At 87, IrisBent is still riding laps.
It keeps me going all the time. That's what keeps me going, is the bikes.
Hello and welcome to Subaru Full Cycle, and yes, it's that time of year. The Tour de France is once again upon us, and we have a realistic chance for an Australian to win it once again with Richie Porte. He's from Tasmania, actually refers to himself as a Tasmanian, not an Australian, but someone that knows him very well because he spent all of Richie's early years when he first started racing in the Australian National Road Series. Pat Shaw, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Scott. Yes, Richie Porte. And I was also there in Italy when he was doing his amateur days, and that was where he really came to fruition and showed what he could have. Saxo picked him up from that. He then picked up a leader's jersey in a Giro d'Italia. We knew that he'd be at this point sometime.
Early on, like what point was it when you were racing back here in Australia with Richie that you thought, oh, this guy's got something a little bit more than everybody else?
Probably Tour of Tasmania when he won the Tour overall up Poatina, same as Ben Dybel did last year, and he just roared up there at a pace that no one else could handle, and that was probably when you realised that this guy could climb the biggest mountains in France.
Well, we did talk to the great man Richie Porte, and here's our exclusive chat with the little Tasmanian.
The Tour's everything for me. I remember the days of, the Robbie McEwens and the Bradley McGees and Stuart O'Grady's, watching those guys, staying up to all hours of the morning to watch those guys do what they're doing. So you still pinch yourself when you're riding in the Tour. Every stage is, it's like riding a one-day classic every day for 21 days. It's the motivation. It's the biggest goal for me this year.
You're riding for a team that Cadel Evans made famous in Australia when he won the Tour de France. How much of an influence has he been on you?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. That's the whole Cadel Evans effect, I think, when you come to Tour Down Under or anywhere in Australia and so many people riding the bikes. I think that's, a little bit Cadel's 2011 Tour de France win. But I find for me, coming from Team Sky, which is a British team, to the BMC racing team, it kind of feels like coming from the Poms to an Aussie team, and people do get behind you that little bit more.
Certainly getting nervous thinking that Richie Porte can take it all the way to Paris. Now, Pat, you've known him for 10 years. Just watching that, listening to him, what have you noticed have been the biggest changes about him?
Well, he definitely has learned to take on the challenges that come with a Grand Tour, and they're the things that are media, people's speculation about his teammates, all that junk that he doesn't want to be thinking about. He doesn't think about that anymore. He's not worried about Froomey, mate. He doesn't care. It's going to be on the line. Richie Porte can win this Tour de France, but the reason he can win it is because of all the work he's done to be able to stay at 58 kilograms and produce power.
58 is pretty light, isn't it? Now, there are 9 Australians in the Tour this year, 2 debutants. So good luck to Damien Housen and Jay McCarthy riding their first Tours. But Adam Hansen, his 18th straight Grand Tour. It's an extraordinary record that he's now out there on his own, so we can see what he can do. And Michael Matthews, I think, is the other guy that can really go for a stage.
Well, I think Adam Hansen climbed one of the big mountains in his off-season. That's his off-season. He goes mountain climbing. He never rests. He doesn't need recovery.
He did tell me when he stops racing, he'll just keep riding just the same way as he does as a professional. He loves riding so much. Now, of course, Richie's big rival at the Tour is the multiple winner in the past and the defending champion, Chris Froome.
The real key stages are going to be the Izoard mountaintop finish, which is our biggest mountaintop finish in the Tour this year, over 2,000 metres. It's a massive climb. I don't think this year's course necessarily suits me as well as previous Tour de France courses have. I say that because of the lack of mountaintop finishes and also the lack of time trial kilometres. But having said that, it means it's going to be a much closer race, a lot more exciting for the fans. And I'm just going to have to make sure I'm absolutely at my best to take advantage of any situations out on the road.
And the first big test comes nice and early on stage 5 to La Planche de Belleville, which, Pat, is the same place. In 2012 was the first time they had this stage finish in the Tour, and it was the first time Chris Froome picked up a stage win. You can see him here going over the top of Cadel Evans. Froome, his teammate, Brad Wiggins, went on to win the Tour. A lot of internal rivalry between those guys in that particular race, and it led to their friendship breakdown.
It certainly did, but what a great victory, and it put Chris Froome on the map. And also our great Cadel Evans in second.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the other, I guess, main stages that we've identified for this year's Tour, you jump ahead to stage 9 into the Alps. They go into the Alps twice. This one's into Chambéry, so a couple of really big mountain stages, and you'll certainly see the overall contenders come up again.
Yes, and definitely a stage that's going to be a big factor is stage 18 for Chris Froome. He mentioned Izoard. He's got to get advantage there. Otherwise, maybe Port can do it. Come on.
Well, I'm hoping Port can take the yellow jersey in the penultimate stage in that final time trial. Only 22.5 kilometres, but it's going to be hot, windy, pretty technical as well. So it'll be a real challenge for all those riders right at the end of the Tour to try and go well in that one. So it's going to be pretty tough. Now, there is the other big race that's on at the moment, though, as well, which is the women's Giro d'Italia, and 2 Aussies that are riding we caught up with to talk about with Annette Edmondson and Tiff Cromwell.
Hi, it's Annette Edmondson here. I'm checking in from Italy. We're here for the GiroRosa. I got the call up about 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, one of my teammates got sick, but I'm really excited because this is my first Giro. I've never done it, even though this is my 4th year as a professional road rider. Yeah, as some of you might have seen, I did have a bit of a run-in with the truck this week. I was coming down a hill on a quiet, small road, and I came around the corner and there was a truck in the way, so unbelievably I'm okay. Bike, not so much, but luckily the mechanics were straight onto it and I've got a new training bike. But yeah, so I'm luckily fine, just a few bruises and some sore knuckles.
The Giro is always a fantastic race to do, to test you mentally and physically, but it's beautiful, the atmosphere is amazing, and there's a surprise around every corner. It's quite a balanced route this year from north to south without a key stage that I'd say is most decisive for the GC, but instead it's the back end of the race where we'll see the overall really take shape. Looking forward to it, hope you follow along and see you out on the road perhaps.
Well, along with Nettie and Tiff, Pat, there are plenty of Aussies there.
11 this year, which is fantastic, shows the strength of women's cycling, but I reckon Annette Edmondson could snatch a stage.
Oh, hopefully. Let's wait and see. We'll see. That's all coming up, though. We'll follow it next week. But after the break, though, BadenCooke comes in to tell us what it's like to win the green jersey at the Tour de France. Welcome back to Subaru Full Cycle. Now, we know the yellow jersey at the Tour de France is the #1 prize, but the green jersey for the points or the sprints competition is certainly probably the second to go for over there. And Peter Sagan is the outright favourite once again. But back in 2003, BadenCooke, the Aussie, picked up the points jersey. Baden, welcome to the show. I want to talk specifically about Peter Sagan to start with, because he really is the outright favourite to win that competition once again. Will he do it?
Yes, the answer is yes. I think he's going to be very hard to beat. Aussie Michael Matthews is in with a shout, because you have to be able to climb quite well to win the jersey. But I think Sagan is showing that he's very fast on the really flat, fast sprints, and that's probably his weakness if he has one. So, well,
here's an example of that. Tour of Switzerland only a couple of weeks ago, where he was incredibly fast, as you say, in those pure sprints that he's normally not the best at.
Yeah, and when I say that's his weakness, that's pretty rich to say that, because he's so good. But that's probably where that's not his forte. So if he's winning by 2 lengths there, he's going to be very hard to beat.
Yeah, he's going really fast. But what about Marcel Kittel? He's a guy that I think can really push him to the line every day for the sprints.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Kittel in an out-and-out drag race is going to beat him most of the time. I'd say maybe 75% of the time. But you know, it does. There's more that comes into it than pure horsepower. You've got to be able to be quite agile in those big bunch sprints in the Tour, and I think Sagan is much more agile than Kittel. So if Kittel, gets maximum points a couple of days, I don't think it's going to be that hard for Sagan to get the points back in the hills or in the more technical finishes.
You mentioned horsepower, and that footage then of Marcel Kittel at Shelter Prize a couple of months ago, he was released early before the finish, and just absolutely muscled it all the way. It was incredible the amount of horsepower that he displayed there. Give him a clean shot, he's certainly going to be hard to beat, I would imagine.
Yeah, well, Kittel's putting out up near 2,000 watts in those bunch of finishes, so he's probably the most powerful guy out there at the moment. So, he can actually gauge it and sort of make it go a little bit longer if he only puts out 1,500 watts.
What about Cav? Last year everyone wrote him off. What can he do this year?
Yeah, I think seeing that he's been sick, he's just coming back. He's only just scraped in the team. I think I'd be surprised if he won a stage, but you never ride off a champion like Cav. He's shown everyone so many times before that he's the fastest. He's probably the best sprinter of all time in the Tour de France. So I won't ride him off, but I predict if he does win a stage, it'll be the back end of the race when he rides into a bit of form.
Well, he's only 4 behind the overall stage-winning record at the Tour de France held by Eddie Merckx, so he's won 30. And he went in last year. You know, people were saying he wasn't in very good form when he came away with, I think, 4 stage wins last year. So we'll see. He certainly will get better now that he's healthy. Now, the other important factor, pardon the pun, for you, because you've got one of your beautiful bikes right next to us here. You are the owner or co-owner of Factor Bikes, and you sponsor one of the World Tour teams in AG2R, which has Romain Bardet, who was second last year.
Yeah, this will be our first Tour de France. We've just started sponsoring AG2R Le Mondial this year. Bardet was second last year. He's going better than last year. All the numbers in training and the watts indicate that he's going better. We haven't actually seen it yet because at the Dauphiné he was 6th. I'll say only 6th because he did expect more than that. That being said, he's on the way up. So in between, he's had 3 weeks in between then, when he's been training very, very hard. And I think if you take into consideration that the big mountain stages are at the back half of the tour, I think you'll see both him and guys like Chris Froome, who weren't that good at Dauphiné, ride into a bit of form.
Yeah, well, I think that AG2R has really built a great team to support him as well. They've now got that full supply of support on the climbs especially. That's where those riders are getting isolated. It's going to give him that ability to probably be more aggressive.
They've got a very strong team. The team is probably 15-20% stronger than last year. After his second place last year, they built a very strong team. The parcours this year really suits him. I think French ASO, the owners of the race, have basically tailor-made it for a Frenchman because he's not the greatest time trialist, and there's only 36 kilometres of time trialling this year, and they've made all the mountain stages quite compact and lots of mountains with descents at the finish, which he's good at too. They've tailor-made it for him. Phil
Anderson said on the show last week that he thought there was a conspiracy theory that ASO have designed a course against Chris Froome, so you're just backing us up there, which is perfect. Now, you won the Jayco Herald Sun Tour back in 2002, and they had a couple of big climbs in that. This is you going on the front up Mount Hotham. There was also Mount Borbor. But as a sprinter, what's it like for the riders at the Tour de France that are just trying to get through those mountain stages? How hard is it to get their chance later on?
Well, I mean, a lot of people might think that the last group, the Gruppetto, is going quite slow, but I mean, even to be within the time limit of the winner of the stage, you have to be, depending on the day, it could be like 7% of the winner's time. You have to go very, very fast still, and so even if you might lose 30 minutes or 40 minutes on a stage where Chris Froome wins at a mountaintop, I think you'd be very surprised how hard you still have to go to be within that time frame.
How about the communication in the group? It's got to be vital because everyone's got to survive together. Otherwise, you're probably not going to make that time cut.
Well, certainly. So when you're riding the green jersey, the key is when it's a stage for you, you score points. So a flat stage, I'll be going into it like it's a one-day race. And then on the mountain stages, I will try to lose the most amount of time possible without going outside the time cut, so I can save my legs for the stages where it counts. So yeah, that's the goal. So basically, when I was riding, myself or my team would be calculating. They'd be getting updates along the course from the lead of the race in the mountains, and we'd be calculating how much time we can lose to save my legs as much as possible for the next sprint stage.
How good were you at school with maths?
I was pretty good. I'm getting worse over the years, but I was pretty good back then, and I've never been in my entire career outside the time cut.
Good stuff, good stuff. Well, look, thanks for coming on today and talking about the green jersey and just giving that insight from a former winner of the green jersey at the Tour de France. And enjoy the tour. I know you're going over next week, so have a great time.
Thanks for having me.
Though, from the France to the dirt and the jumps in particular, after the break, we've got to Crankworx. Welcome back to Subaru Full Cycle. Now, we've had plenty of on-road talk on today's show, but let's go off-road for a change and checking out the latest round from Crankworx. Crankworx headed to the two-time Winter Olympic city of Innsbruck in Austria for round 3. And after spectacular slope-style qualifying runs, it came down to the two riders that have already won on the World Series this year. Nikolai Rogadkin or Brett Reeder had to win to keep alive their chances of taking 3 out of the 4 rounds and claiming that elusive Triple Crown. First to go was Rogadkin.
He only had a double in the first run. Backflip, bar spin up. A double tail whip down. He needs to stop this. Oh! A cash roll tail whip straight to Paddle.
Rogadkin makes history here in Innsbruck.
Are you kidding me?
Reeder now knew he had to do something very special if he was to win.
The regular Cork 720 bar spin, even smoother than run number 1. Opposite 360 bar spin to bar spin back. The triple truck down, one last jump for Brett Reeder. Backflip double tail if he stops it. Jeez.
And even Rogadkin approves.
Is this the best rope stop contest ever? Oh, man.
Here comes the score coming in for Brett Reeder. It needs to better a 96. 95.66, it is not enough.
Nikolai Rogadkin now heads to the final round in Whistler, Canada, hoping to make history.
Yeah, for me to do the run that I did, I'm also over the moon about it, and to walk away with the win in such a close contest and such a battle is an insane feeling, and honestly, it really makes me stoked and makes all the risk and the danger worth it, you know.
Now, we do watch so much road racing, Pat, but gee, these guys are fantastic, aren't they?
I haven't even got the ability to think how they even do that stuff. It's crazy, but it's fascinating.
Well, I've done a couple of those tricks, but it was just by accident, just getting it all wrong. Now, someone that's left her double backflips way in the past is IrisBent. She's 87 years of age, but she still loves riding a bike.
Keeps me going all the time. That's what keeps me going, is the bikes. Well, my father was a bike rider, and I was interested watching him, and then I said to him, I'd like to do that. So he took me up to Brunswick track, where there was quite a few girls, and I started racing, started training, and then I started racing. I won 25 Victorian and 16 Australian championships. I was inducted into the Australian Hall of Fame. I was also into the Victorian Hall of Fame as well. So I was very honoured with that. From Anna Mears, I got when I was inducted into the Hall of Fame, the Victorian Hall of Fame, she sent me this text letter, which was very, very nice, very good. And I've still got that.
She's a legend. She really is. She's a legend. She should inspire anybody that comes along here. You know, and they don't, you know, the golden oldies, they don't have to have flash bikes or anything. As long as they've got a bike, they're happy to have them here.
It was formed about 30 years ago, the Golden Oldies. We come 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday and Friday, and we have a cuppa after we've finished. And we used to have quite a few members. We had about 60 members at one stage. Now it's got down to about 10 because they've all gone to God. A mile wheel race, and they have that once a year, and it's in my name. IrisBent Dixon Trophy. I never got into the fancy push your foot in that, and I've seen too many pull their foot out, so I still have the old toe clips and straps and everything else. I've got asthma and it really helps me, really does help me, because if I didn't have the bikes breathing and carrying on, I'd probably be dead.
And good on Iris at 87, still pedalling a bike. And I reckon there's one particular cyclist that she's a big fan of.
Well, big Miguel Indurain, but Scott, this is what I love about cycling. You can ride as a kid with training wheels on and still, in your 80s, still riding around the velodrome. That's what's so fascinating about the sport of cycling.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. But don't go away, though, because after the break, we've got a big finish coming up. Welcome back to Subaru Full Cycle. Now we've got a host of Australians that have gone over to the USA to race as well throughout our winter. We'll see them back towards the end of the year of the National Road Series. But Josie Talbot was good enough to send us through this from the Tour of the America's Dairylands.
My name's Josie Talbot and I'm over here in America racing for my team called IS Corp powered by Progress. We've just been racing an 11-day series called Tour of America's Dairyland. I was lucky enough to snag myself 2 wins in the series and 2nd overall, and it's been really fun because we've had so many Australian riders come over and join us over here. So the likes of Beck Wysack, Peter Mullins and even Gracie Elvin have been over here. Next for me is BC Super Week in Vancouver, Canada. So that'll be a lot of more racing criteriums and a UCI road race, which will be heaps of fun.
Pat, 1st, 2nd and 3rd in the overall classification for that particular tour with Wysack, Josie and Peter Mullins as well.
Josie won for the future, only a young talent, and Peter and Beck, well, they continue to show that they're fast on the line in the criteriums.
No, it's a nice way of saying they're veterans of the sport, that's for sure. Now, what do you do with good form? Well, Tony Duchesne, the French-Canadian, posted a photo on social media of his legs ahead of the Tour de France, just saying how fit and how much work he'd done, and then his team Direct Energy didn't select him for the tour.
And nor did they select Brian Cockart.
Yeah, well, that's controversial. That's really controversial one because he announced that he was not going to ride for the team next year, so they just didn't put him in the Tour de France team. That's bad form. Now, Mike Tomalaris, of course, is over at the Tour de France once again. He's in Dusseldorf, and he's been active on social media as well. Put this photo up in Germany at the start line in Dusseldorf, which is perhaps doesn't look very appropriate, but quick explanation. In Germany, your registration, the DO means Dortmund, the town that the car's registered in. PE are the initials of the owner of the particular vehicle. It makes sense, doesn't it?
Thanks for clarifying that, Scott. It's important.
Well, good segue into this next little piece, though. The Tour de Pharmacy. We're all waiting to see what this is going to be all about. Have a look.
The 1982 Tour de France.
Nearly every rider was on drugs.
Everyone was cheating, except for me.
How do you beat a man on drugs if you're not on drugs?
Are you sure you can't see me?
No, looks like we're still fine on the monitor. If you're worried about it, we can give you some clothes to change your outline or something.
Sure. Wait a second. I think I'm a lot more recognizable with the helmet on. This is not good.
Well, that cycling mockumentary comes out July 8, and I don't know whether to laugh or cry, Pat.
Well, it's hilarious, but Lance Armstrong, let's admit, he's not a laughing matter.
That's all we've got time for today, mate. Thanks for coming on.
Looking forward to the Tour de France. Go, Richie.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for this week. We'll see you next week. We'll leave you with some more action from Crankworx.
Oh, not again! Oh, back the tail getting hung up. Oh, wow. A 360 bar spin looping out on the cannon. And a double flip at the bottom.